Eli 5 The Big Bang did not start as a singular point but happened everywhere at once. Everywhere and everything was all in the same place at the same time, then bang! Everywhere started getting bigger and everything began spreading out, cooling off, and condensing into stuff. Everywhere keeps getting bigger but since there's no new stuff being added, everything just keeps spreading out. Eventually everything will be so far apart, nobody will be able to see anything. Finally, everything is decaying so everything is becoming nothing, spread everywhere. Also, dark matter does something somewhere, but we don't quite know what or where or why or how, but for sure it is. Let's say a rubber band weighs 0.2 grams, you stretch it out or squish it into a little ball, it still weighs 0.2 grams. Size of the universe however is infinite, stretch it out or squish it into singularity, it doesn't get any less infinite in size. Big Bang wasn't singularity of a very small universe, it was singularity of a very dense universe. Really, this is companion question to what is universe expanding into? And derives from the same misunderstanding of what expansion of space means. Once you understand the answer to one question, you understand the other two. Think of the universe like a balloon. When empty, the universe is small, but nothing outside of it is a universe. Only the balloon exists. Then you blow it up to simulate the expansion of the universe post-Big Bang. The balloon is bigger now. The amount of rubber in the balloon hasn't changed, but it takes up for more space. This isn't a perfect analogy, but this can be difficult to grasp right away without a mathematical context to explain it in, and is sometimes easier to come back to over time to grasp. Imagine you are inside a big chocolate chip cookie dough that is put inside the oven. As it bakes and expands, from your viewpoint all the other chocolate chips are receding away from you, i.e. space is expanding, so you would think you're the center of the universe, but from the vantage point of a different chocolate chip, you and the other chips are receding away from it, so it is the center of the universe. The key is that nothing moved, instead, space expanded between particles chocolate chips. It did happen at a single location, but since everything in the universe was also at that location everything in the universe was in the Big Bang so the debris from the explosion is everywhere at once so from the point of view of the debris there is no single point of origin. In theory if you were to step outside the universe and able to observe it how this would happen regarding speed of light is impossible to say there would be a single location where it could be said to be spreading out from. My theory is since everything else observable is cyclical that the Big Bang was merely the inversion of whatever existed prior. I subscribe to the idea that inside black holes is another universe, composed of whatever has been absorbed into the black hole and shot out the other side. Since everything observable is consumed by a black hole it makes sense the other side is another replication of our existing universe materially, making us even smaller than we even imagine inside our single universe. Imagine you're a microscopic organism living on a bubble that got formed from someone blowing through a bubble wand. Your universe is a bubble. The bubble didn't start at a single point from your frame of reference, it just got bigger as it expanded. From a human's perspective, you can point to where the bubble is and where it started. But to something whose entire existence is within the bubble, the big blow didn't happen at any single point, but it happened everywhere on the bubble at once. Have to link this here. They explain it pretty well. Basically the everywhere is all contained in a singular point, like a stack of cards which then you throw up in the air. Everything was one thing, the stack, and suddenly there's a bunch of things moving away from each other. The problem is that this analogy involves something breaking or separating, which wasn't the case with the Big Bang. Think about a loaf of bread in an oven. Then take away the oven, yourself, and literally everything else in existence. There is only bread now. Everything that exists is within the bounds of this piece of bread, the entirety of existence is taking place within this loaf. As the bread cooks, the bread rises expands. The amount of matter in the bread stays the same, but parts of bread are now further away from other bread. Bread continues to expand indefinitely. Scale matters. The observable universe was in a hot dense state. It happened everywhere because we are still inside that original hot dense stuff, it has just cooled and expanded. What is outside the observable universe? Probably more of the same. So at the Big Bang, our observable portion was the size of a grapefruit hot and dense but more could exist. The grapefruit was not really, but an infinite universe and a hot dense start. Everywhere expanded. Think of a room filled with flammable gases. Now imagine the gas molecules are rubbing against each other until they create enough friction to ignite. This happens in many different places at once within the gas cloud. Now, if you've ever seen a slow motion video of an explosion occurring, you'll know that a vacuum is created at first. So everything is pulled toward each of the ignition points before exploding outwards. I have always thought of it as a phase transition, meaning whatever was before the universe as we know it suddenly became the universe as we know it. Sort of like if you toss a thin cut of butter in a hot pan. It almost immediately turns to liquid, all at once, covering the pan. Obviously, in the case of the universe, it's a bit more abstract and geometrically complex, but it's conceptually the same idea. If everything is expanding from the moment where everything was infinitely packed, wouldn't that mean that even the components of our solar system are moving away from each other? Explanations have always had me visualizing an edge that is unreachable because it spreads, but if it's instead a barrier that expands, like the inside of a balloon we're in, wouldn't our solar system technically be growing? I would love to hear about the speed of causality. Or was everything created, and I mean everything created on the figurative head of a needle, and that was the actual start? Then a totally separate event was the explosion that create time and space. It could have happened 10 trillion years later, less than a Planck time unit, but all the matter and energy was compacted into oneness. The best analogy is that the Big Bang was an event, it was everything. There was nothing at all, and then suddenly there was everything. Everything came into existence all at once and then very quickly went about the business of separation itself, and that's basically what we've been up to ever since. We are still, in a very real sense, inside the Big Bang. Maybe you can think about it like a balloon. A balloon is space, and you blowing up the balloon is basically the Big Bang. It happens all over the balloon and expands it into a sphere, but the balloon started as basically a single small place, but that whole balloon is now entirety of space. In that way Big Bang happened all over the balloon. Just like a field of flowers blooms all at once, because the season is just right, space bloomed. And just like in a very big field, where you can spin and see flowers as far as the eye can see, we can spin and see space as far as a telescope can see. Maybe there is an edge, but so far we haven't seen it. All we see are flowers. You can't say that there is or isn't a center or an edge to the universe, and you can say that the Big Bang started or didn't start from a singularity. Because you can say anything definitive about the geometry or bounds of the universe, you often see it being described as a Big Bang happening everywhere. Everything including space was compressed into the singular point, so when it happened, it was everywhere at once. There was no empty space before the Big Bang. We can't really say what there was or is before the Big Bang. Our best speculation is there was nothing, but we don't even know that. Check this one out top. Time didn't exist as a separate plane before the Big Bang, so there wasn't anything before it because there wasn't a before. So if anything happened, it had to happen everywhere at the same time because time was created at the point of the Big Bang. Both are true because everywhere was there at that point. But now there is here because it has expanded over time. It's not so much that new space is being created near the edge. New space pops up roughly evenly throughout the universe inside of old space. It's exactly the same thing. The universe expanded from all directions. And it started from one tiny unimaginable small something. Basically our minds can't visualize it. You have to be a mathematician in physics to see it in the numbers and equations. Everywhere at once was a singular point. There wasn't any space until the Big Bang happened or any time either, and it's been expanding ever since. Now everywhere is a lot bigger, but it's still the same everywhere where the Big Bang happened. My pre-workout container is 195 grams and fits in a small handheld container. It will last me 2 months and spread out through a solution of 240,000 grams. Thus expanding the size of that small container of powder to 60x its current size. Everything that ever was that we know of existed in a single point. That single point expanded, but we didn't leave it. It's not that one happened and not the other. That single point was all the where there is to our knowledge. Everywhere and everything was in one place. Everywhere was inside of one suitcase. The suitcase eventually exploded, sending everything and everywhere somewhere else. And those things are still moving away from where the suitcase was. You know when you turn on your computer, Terry's that brief moment where your desktop hasn't loaded in quite yet, so it's just your background, and then suddenly all of your apps and shortcuts pop in all at once. That's the Big Bang. Everywhere was a single point. There is nothing our universe is expanding into. It's hard to visualize and comprehend, but everything that is inside our universe, at least as far as we know and possibly can know. It always makes more sense to me that whatever it is that we call the Big Bang happened in absolute nothingness. Which is what space would be without the Big Bang. Anyways, very neat and interesting stuff. The issue is that everywhere was a single point. The Big Bang happened everywhere, but everywhere was bunched up into a tiny point. The Big Bang happened and everywhere became different places. Everything and everywhere was infinitesimally small. Saying it started as a single point doesn't make sense because there was nothing else. Everything was contained within the Big Bang. Space was smaller then. Think of space like the surface of a balloon. It starts small. Think of inflation as, well, inflation. It gets bigger everywhere on the surface at once. All theories we have two assumptions: the Big Bang started in a dimensionless state, and turns into an infinite one. We haven't really no idea how this transition occurs. Essentially the Big Bang created reality. Nothing existed before, not even empty space. Literally reality didn't exist. I think it's impossible for us to comprehend. Simple. At the moment of the Big Bang, all of space and time was at a single point. So it did start at a singular point. But that point was everywhere and everyone. Everything you see is the Big Bang, just older and evolved. The Big Bang is the birth of our universe, but most importantly, the starting of time. Dun duh! Everywhere and everyone were just all very close together when it happened, and then they spread out very quickly like some kind of large boom. When the universe started, it was a single condensed point. When you inflate a balloon, where on the surface of the balloon did it start inflating? The balloon. It's a vast expansion all at once, everything moving outward. It's not a bang. In fact, I think the bro who coined that term regrets it. That's just how big it was. It was so big, that all stuff is not debris from it. It was so big, that the energy inside it, took on properties. It didn't happen everywhere. It made everywhere. Before there was no everywhere. Then it happened and suddenly there was an everywhere.